America's most beautiful skyscraper is fighting for survival. Not from old age, not from neglect alone, but from a problem so strange, so uniquely New York, that even the most experienced real estate minds in the world have struggled to solve it. One of America's greatest skyscrapers is facing a crisis that money, history, and fame cannot easily fix. Nearly a century after it transformed Manhattan's skyline, nobody is quite sure what happens next. This is the story of the Chrysler Building. Here is something most people do not know about the Chrysler Building. Whoever owns it owns the skyscraper reaching into the sky, but they do not own the ground holding it up. That land belongs to someone else entirely. And in New York City, this is more common than most people realize. Buildings and land are often owned by completely different people. So whoever owns the Chrysler Building must pay rent every single year to whoever owns the soil beneath it. In theory, this system can work. But for the Chrysler Building, it has become a financial nightmare. To understand why, we first need to understand who actually owns this legendary skyscraper. Your first guess is probably the Chrysler family. And once upon a time, you would have been right. The building was originally constructed and owned by Walter Chrysler himself in 1930. Not by the Chrysler Corporation. This was his personal vision, a monument built to carry his name above Manhattan. He wanted it to become a permanent family legacy, and it remained in the family until 1953, when it was sold to developer William Zeckendorf, the man responsible for major projects including the United Nations headquarters and much of Manhattan's transformation during the 1950s and 60s. Ownership then passed through several investors during New York's difficult real estate era of the 1970s. Then, in 1997, major real estate firm Tishman Speyer purchased the building for $220 million and carried out one of its most significant restorations in decades, spending $100 million to restore its Art Deco details and upgrade important systems. In 2008, Tishman Speyer sold a controlling stake to the Abu Dhabi Investment Council while remaining involved as a manager and minority partner. In the years that followed, RFR became deeply involved with the building's ownership and management. But financial pressures continued to grow. By 2024, RFR entered receivership after defaulting on its loans. Today, the Chrysler Building is effectively controlled by its lenders, and it is once again on the market. A property once worth hundreds of millions of dollars is now struggling to attract buyers. So, what went wrong? The answer begins beneath the building itself. The land beneath the Chrysler Building is owned by Cooper Union, a private college founded in 1859 by industrialist and philanthropist Peter Cooper. Back in 1902, long before the Chrysler Building existed, Cooper Union purchased this land as an investment. The income generated from this property helped fund the institution for generations and allowed Cooper Union to provide free tuition for over a century. But today, the same land has become the center of the Chrysler Building's biggest problem. Whoever owns the building must pay Cooper Union $32.5 million every year just to rent the ground it stands on. That means before paying for repairs, staff, electricity, taxes, or loans, tens of millions of dollars disappear every year. And it is only getting worse. By 2028, the annual rent rises to $41 million. By 2038, it climbs to $55 million. Now, combine that with another challenge. With office vacancy reportedly sitting around 14 to 20%, the building's income struggles to cover its growing expenses. The gap between what the building earns and what it owes continues to widen. The economics are becoming harder and harder to sustain. Walk into the Chrysler Building today, and the signs of years of deferred maintenance are difficult to ignore. Elevators break down frequently. Some tenants have reported issues with discolored water from aging plumbing systems. Electrical systems are outdated and increasingly below the expectations of modern office tenants. Look up at the lobby, one of the greatest Art Deco interiors ever created, and signs of deterioration reveal how much work the building still needs. Some retail and ground floor spaces remain empty or underused. The exterior faces its own challenges. The iconic stainless steel crown and spire, the feature that made this building famous around the world, requires significant restoration. The original windows and masonry walls from the 1930s are poorly insulated by modern standards, allowing air leakage and increasing energy costs. Because the Chrysler Building is protected as a landmark structure, major changes require approval from New York's Landmarks Preservation Commission. Even repairs can become slow, expensive, and complicated. Experts estimate that bringing the building fully into the modern era could cost between $150 million and $200 million. That is on top of the land rent, on top of the mortgage, on top of everything else. Any new owner is not simply buying a skyscraper. They are buying a challenge. But to understand why people still fight to save this building, we have to return to the moment it was created. The Chrysler Building was born from rivalry. Two former business partners, architects Craig Severance and William Van Allen, found themselves on opposite sides of a race to build the tallest structure on Earth. Severance was designing what became 40 Wall Street. Van Allen was designing the Chrysler Building. This was not just professional competition. This was personal. Plans were leaked. Drawings were secretly studied. At 40 Wall Street, extra floors were added in a risky attempt to defeat its midtown rival. When it was completed in 1930, 40 Wall Street briefly became the tallest building in the world. For about a month, because Van Allen had one final surprise. Hidden inside the Chrysler Building's crown was a secret spire. It had been assembled in sections completely out of sight. When 40 Wall Street declared victory, the spire was raised through the roof and locked into place. 36 meters were added in a single day. The Chrysler Building had taken the crown. But its greatness was never only about height. Walter Chrysler wanted the building to reflect the automobile industry that made him famous. The eagle head gargoyles were inspired by Plymouth hood ornaments. The decorative details on the 31st floor were influenced by Chrysler radiator caps. And the stainless steel crown, with its incredible starburst design, was inspired by automobile styling of that era. There has never been another building quite like it. The Chrysler Building held the world height record for 339 days before the Empire State Building surpassed it. But no taller building ever replaced its cultural power. The engineers who built it never imagined that one day the question would be, can we afford to keep it? Behind the financial numbers and architectural history, there are real people connected to this crisis. The tenants who continue working inside a building struggling to meet modern expectations. The maintenance crews managing a century-old structure every day. The small businesses that chose this location because of what the Chrysler Building represents. And then there are the people who simply love it. The tourists who stop on Lexington Avenue and look up at its crown. The New Yorkers who have passed it their entire lives and consider it part of the city's identity. For them, this is not just a real estate story. It is something much more personal. The Chrysler Building is not the first historic structure to face this kind of crisis. Other landmarks have survived by finding new purposes. Battersea Power Station in London sat abandoned for decades before being transformed into a mixed-use destination with shops, restaurants, offices, and apartments. The conversion helped fund its restoration. In New York, the Flatiron Building is being converted into residential apartments. The Woolworth Building, once the tallest building in the world, transformed its upper floors into luxury residences. So what could work for the Chrysler Building? A partial residential conversion could create a new source of income. A hotel component could introduce another revenue stream. A cultural attraction could bring new visitors and purpose to empty spaces. But above everything else, the future depends on one thing: a renegotiated land lease with Cooper Union. Without more sustainable terms, major investment will remain difficult. Cooper Union needs a financially healthy building generating rent. The building needs conditions that allow restoration. Both sides have a reason to find common ground. Tishman Speyer, the company that previously owned and restored the building, has reportedly shown interest again. They understand the building better than almost anyone, and they may be among the few groups capable of making a deal work. Because this issue goes far beyond one skyscraper. For the first time in history, cities around the world are dealing with century-old skyscrapers. Buildings that changed what cities could become. Structures that defined entire skylines. But many now face the same challenges. Aging systems, rising costs, changing demands, and owners struggling to balance preservation with reality. The Chrysler Building is a preview of a much larger problem. A problem that architecture, finance, and governments will eventually have to solve together. Because restoring buildings like this requires rare skills. Specialists who understand historic materials. Engineers who can work inside landmark structures. Architects who can adapt old designs for a modern world. The longer these buildings wait, the harder and more expensive they become to save. The Chrysler Building is now a test case. Not just for one owner, not just for one lender, but for how society chooses to protect the things it has inherited. Because great cities are not remembered by balance sheets. They are remembered by the structures that give them their identity. The buildings that make people stop, look up, and feel something they cannot fully explain. The Chrysler Building is one of those structures. It was created at a time when ambition had no ceiling. When architects secretly competed to change the skyline forever. When a car manufacturer decided to put his name above Manhattan in steel and stone. That kind of ambition is rare. And the result is even rarer. When something this beautiful and impossible to recreate is under threat, it deserves more than a sale listing and a financial report. Whatever happens next will say something about us. About whether we have the imagination and commitment to preserve what previous generations created. The Chrysler Building has survived the Great Depression. It has survived changing cities, economic crashes, and decades of uncertainty. It is still standing. It is still extraordinary. And when the evening light hits that crown perfectly, it remains one of the most beautiful sights in New York. It just needs someone willing to fight for it. The Chrysler Building beat gravity once in 1930, when a hidden spire rose above everything else in the sky. Maybe, just maybe, it can do it again.